Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And this subject is actually quite worrying. It's something that's been discussed before, but it's something that nobody seems to be paying much attention to. We're talking about ghost children. And we're not talking here about, spirits coming back and haunting us, the ghost of an Edwardian child inhabiting the east wing of the house here. We're talking about, during COVID, parents took children out of school. And a lot of them never went back. They've disappeared. They've disappeared from the records. They've disappeared from schools. There's nobody giving oversight. It is suspected that there's quite a few of them that have died and that nobody knows. Because you're having families often with difficulties, in difficult conditions, and a child in an atmosphere where there's two parents sitting in a lockdown situation. The antagonisation of stress, of basically, cabin fever, and it's been taken out on the child. And I think children have undoubtedly died, and nobody has made a comment about this because there's no children being missing from school. They just never went to school, so there was no parents. There was no other parents by the school gate. There was no teachers. There was nobody noticed. There was no oversight. And all these children have disappeared. And when asked about it, the person who's currently responsible, Jenny Gilruth, hasn't got a clue. But then why would she? She's Jenny Gilruth. She hasn't got a clue about anything. And she's in the SNP, who don't really care. We'll take a look at this article, but I think, if you look at the larger picture here, it is a very worrying issue, and one that somebody has to address. I think there needs to be an inquiry, and there certainly needs to be a massive follow-up to locate and ensure the safety of every child that is not currently, whose whereabouts are not currently known. Put it that way. I think every child in Scotland must be audited, for the want of a better word. Anyway, we'll have a look at this and see what's going on. Here goes. Now, I must say, before we get into it, that it isn't particularly a Scottish problem about ghost children. It is a nationwide problem. It's a UK issue. But it's just that in Scotland, they don't know how many are missing. In the UK as a whole, or in the rest of UK under England and Wales law, they do know. They've got a rough idea of how many are missing, and they're doing something about it. But in Scotland, it's not even being addressed. No one is doing anything, and I think that is very worrying. And I don't mean that I don't mean harm has come to all the children, but these children must at least get back into school, get an education. Otherwise, their futures are beyond repair. Anyway, we'll have a look at this. Jenny Gilruth admits she doesn't know how many ghost children are missing from Scottish schools. She doesn't know much about anything, to be fair. Thousands of children have never returned to the classroom after the COVID school closures, but the Scottish Government can't say how many are in danger of slipping through the net because they don't know and they don't care. Since the pandemic, tens of thousands of children have not returned to school. The plight of the so-called ghost children has been described as an urgent national crisis, and this is UK-wide problem. The latest figures from the Department of Education show that more than 125,000 children were out of school in England. More than in school. Wow, I've just read what that says. I'm going to read it again. That is stunning. The latest figures from the Department of Education show that more than 125,000 children were out of school in England. That's more than in school for the first term of the last academic year. That is double the number before COVID. More kids not in school than in school. That is mind-blowing. Who's chasing this up? Anyway, when the Scottish Government was asked about this vitally important issue, Education Secretary Jenny Gilruth admitted they have no idea about the scale of the problem north of the border. I bet they don't. At Holyrood, Scots Tory MSP Rachel Hamilton asked, how many pupils disappeared from the education system during the 22-23 academic year, in light of recent reports that thousands of school pupils were unaccounted for by local authorities elsewhere in the UK? That's a very good question. And it's one I think absolutely needs priority to answer. These children must be identified, must be found, and must be assessed to make sure that they are well. And then get them back into school. Well, assuming that they're not being homeschooled. If they're being homeschooled, absolutely fine. But I still think that they need to be checked to make sure that they are homeschooled and safe. The problem isn't the homeschooling. The problem, I think, is safe. Are they safe? In a response published on Monday, Ms Gilruth replied, "The Scottish Government does not hold this information centrally. Local authorities may hold this information." Then she, as the person responsible, must write to each of the local authorities and get those figures. She added that schools are expected to follow up absence immediately and to continue to follow up absence for those for whom there are welfare concerns. The SNP minister also said local authorities are expected to have robust processes and guidance for children who do not attend school from the first day they are missing until they are re-engaged with education. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if someone's ill and you get a note from the parent or a phone call to the office, you know, little Johnny's got a cold, he'll be in a couple of days, I think it'll be okay, whatever. Fine, they expect that happens. But when it goes on or it's repeated, then yeah, you need someone to go and do a welfare visit. Times are hard, people are suffering, and in any case where there's any kind of hardship in a family or difficulty in a family, it's usually the children that suffer the most. So I do think there should be follow-up concerns. I do have a thing about safety of children. It's something that's always bothered me. You might have seen, if your regular viewers know, I don't like the children being harmed. It gets to me in any way. I suppose it's being a parent. My son is like 33 now, but you know, he's still my little boy. Anyway, the SNP minister, who said local authorities are expected to have robust processes and guidance for children who do not say the truth. Oh, we've done that one, right. Despite Miss Gilruth's failure to shed any light on the numbers, the Scottish Government does play a key role in managing the issue of children missing from education, as it should. It's its basic job, the safety of its people. And children are small, but still people. It runs both the CMIS database, which holds the details of all pupils in Scotland, and the Children Missing from Education Scotland service, which works with local authorities to track down missing students, but only when absolutely necessary. Well, yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's okay to take your child out of school. There's no legal obligation to put your child through a school. There is a legal obligation to have your child educated, but that does not necessarily mean in a school. And so you can home educate so long as you are educating to a high enough degree or a suitable level. The most recent figures in Scotland obtained last year by the Scots Tories under the Freedom of Information. It's sad, in fact, that it needs to go freedom of information rather than the sort of thing that's published. It should be a regular publication. People should know. This shouldn't require freedom of information. This highlighted that 14,208 pupils missed more than half of the 21-22 school year. So you're not talking a few days here and there with illness. You're talking a significant portion of their education. This was an increase of 34% from 2019-20, where there were 10,561 pupils absent for more than 50% of the time. This is appalling. This should have been picked up day one. This shouldn't require a freedom of information request and then questions from Tories on about how the SNP are dealing with a problem like this. This should have been proactively dealt with by the SNP, and if they weren't looking at independence all the time, maybe they would have seen it. Some children are marked as missing because their families have moved house and failed to tell the school. However, campaigners fear that others disappear for far more sinister reasons, including abuse and forced marriage. Definitely happening, and I suspect there are dead children in those numbers. In England, the Local Government Association is calling for the UK government to introduce a register for absent children. Councillor Louise Gittins, a chair of the LGA's Children and Young People, said, "We have long raised with the government that councils lack the powers to ensure that children who are missing school don't slip through the net." Quite right. I mean, go and chase it up. And if you chase it up and find that the children are being adequately educated at home, That's absolutely fine. And you do one home visit a term, say. That would be fine as well. In response, UK ministers have stepped up work with the charity Barnardo's in a number of areas with the highest levels of pupil absence. These include Knowlesy in Liverpool, Doncaster, Stoke-on-Trent and Salford. It doesn't surprise me that they're all in northern and fairly run-down areas. Areas where there's the most difficulty and where family life is going to be fairly hard because of sort of inherent poverty of the area. And that often leads, though, I'm afraid, to the abuse of the child one way or another, all the way up to and including the death of a child. So it's something that the SNP need to jump on immediately, get that register together, and then locate and find those children. It's a safeguarding issue. She needs to do her job. Make a change, wouldn't it? Anyway, she'll stop there and come up. Now, I accept that education authorities are at a council level and therefore the responsibility of numbers are at a council level or an authority level, local authority level. But surely they must be reported upwards to a central committee at government level. The education of children must be a governmental matter, and therefore, even if the responsibility for it lies at the sort of the council or borough level, there must be governmental oversight. There must be, within the Department of Education, for example, there must be a register of who, these numbers, all over these numbers, who's attending, who's not attending. And they must have seen from the 2019-20, that's how far back this goes, 3 years, that there was all these people not at school. Now, okay, you grant in 1920, difficult, COVID, whatever. But then 2021, they would have seen it, then they could have investigated. 21, 22, they could have seen it, then they'd have investigated. It's now 22, 23, and they're still not investigating. So yes, accepting that the numbers are at a council level, but the responsibility after 4 years must lie at governmental level, and that is an SNP government, and that is currently Jenny Gilruth. She must, within the next few days, announce some kind of task force that is going to go out, locate and ensure the safeguarding of these children. I will keep an eye on this story. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see here on the channel, please hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video, and until next time, stay safe, stay well. And if you're aware of anyone in your neighbourhood whose child appears not to go to school, just check and let the authorities know. You're not grassing up, you might be saving a life. Bye.